All right, let's go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending this afternoon's webinar, a Nacho Same Old LTM. With us presenting, we have two great presenters, Paula Brody and Melissa Olson. Very excited to hand off to them in just a minute. First, I have a few housekeeping items. You should be able to toggle the video and PowerPoint on your screen to make it bigger or smaller, however you like. We're going to close the video screen to kill the infinite loop. If you have any questions, we welcome them. Please type them into the GoToMeeting module or chat box. We will ask them throughout the presentation or save them towards the end, depending on whether it makes sense to plug them in at any given time. Also, we will be recording this webinar, and it takes us a few days to get it converted up on YouTube, but we'll be distributing that, so you'll be able to rewatch it and share it. I will point out that this is the 5th live webinar we're doing today. We're trying to keep our energy levels high. Hopefully you guys have been to some of the earlier ones. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Ms. Olson and Ms. Brody.
Thank you, Keith. Hi, welcome to our LTM presentation. And it's Nacho Same LTM because it's not even called LTM anymore. It is Global HR and it is Talent Management. So we'll be answering some questions that Paul and I and others around the firm have been getting through clients, just what's going on, what should we do, and some of the questions that we have kind of come up with on our own based on some of the new information that's been coming down from Infor in the last few months. RPI, who we are. So we've been around since 1999. We were almost totally all in the loss in space. We've got consultants all over the country, over 40, grown immensely in the last couple of years. And we are an alliance partner with Infor.
All right, well, I'm Paula Brody, and obviously, since that was Melissa, and one of the very first questions that we often get is around the whole, should I even, starting off, so let's start off with what was previously known as S3 and now is often referred to as HRM. And the question is, number one, do we even upgrade from 9 to 10 if we're thinking about GHR and talent management? And the answer to that one is absolutely, you should be looking at upgrading from 9 to 10. One of the things is that there's a lot of functionality that goes along with the upgrade from not necessarily the application functionality, but from a technical functionality, and that is that once you put in process flow, it actually gets your environment ready for talent management. And that's a huge, huge plus that I think everybody needs to think about. One of the other things that we've also been getting as well is I've been doing a lot of assessments, and we're getting a lot of hospitals that have done acquisitions. And because of the acquisitions, they have multiple HR companies, and they're going, how do we really manage all of this? And one of the things is that they're asking the question, should we actually just think about re-implementing in 10? And that is putting all of our different hospitals onto one HR company. And again, it's one of those things that, from our standpoint, we're really saying probably don't look at necessarily re-implementing 10. And the reason being is, let's go to the next slide, and that is because of the fact that maybe instead of re-implementing 10, maybe the solution on that is to go ahead and actually implement global HR. So this is kind of a nice segue into talking about talent management. Talent management, as you know, originally got beta back out in 2008, and it has come a long way from its original. And one of the things that's really changed on this one now is that GHR is really the whole foundation for everything that you're going to be doing in talent management. And so one of the things that we're really recommending for people that are existing S3 customers is to really look at least at a minimum, going ahead after they've done their 10 upgrade, is to look at going ahead and implementing GHR. So again, some of the other things is, again, there are customers that are out there that are saying, do I really want to go ahead knowing that maybe, and we're going to talk about this more, since payroll has to remain in our S3 environment, and everything else is in GHR. There is a lot of talk about whether or not you want to be looking at a new technology. Obviously, we are saying to everybody, hey, you know what, this is a great product. You really need to be looking at staying with your payroll on S3 and moving into talent management.
Okay, so got some little quotes around this slide here because this is directly from Infor. This was one of the slides they released at the Winter Showcase last month, or actually 2 months ago now, or back in March. This is, we've got the future is now here. This is what the future view of human resources or human capital management will be once you're all over onto the landmark environment. Also once you're over into 11, but all of these products are available right now. So what we're looking at is you've got in your analytics space, your HR service delivery, which is your case management, which is your onboarding and offboarding tool, your knowledge management. You've also got your self-service for those onboarding and the offboarding pieces. And then when you get into talent management, when I talked about it earlier, breaking up, it was Lawson Talent Management before LTM, and now they've really decided to go into global HR as your core HRIS, and that's kind of broken out of TM as what we would know now as our S3 HRM or HCM piece module. And then your talent management is your ancillary modules that really help define all of or help move your talent through their life cycle. So in our talent management space, we've got your performance and goals, your succession management, your compensation management, your talent acquisition, recruiting piece. And then, as I said, the global HR is your true HRIS. This is where your system of record lives. This is where you're going to be doing all of your actions, your personnel actions, pay changes, terminations. This is where your skills and competencies will live. When you set those up, this does truly make your system ready for the talent management pieces to be bolted on and utilized fully. Your benefits and payroll, or I'm sorry, your benefits and absence management have now moved into the global HR system, and they are live in version 11, which did come out in January. It is generally available, so those pieces are live now. If you are on S3, and as Paula said, we're going to be going a little bit more into this, and you have all three of those batch processing programs, your benefits, absence management, and payroll. Your benefits and absence can move, everything can move over to Landmark, but your payroll will still have to live in S3. So they do mention it down here. It is part of your HCM, but it is not technically in global HR, so I want to make that distinction. Up here under the sciences area, you've got your workforce management, your people organization system, scheduling, labor budgeting, forecasting, your time and attendance system, learning management. This, and we want to kind of, I want to also make another differentiation here. We've got development in talent management, and that is your development plans and your career development paths for your employees. And your learning management is the tool that will actually deliver the learning. So this is where you'll set up your classes, you'll distribute, or your online classes will be played through there. All of the learning happens in that third party, which has been, taken in by Lawson and delivered as a core piece of the HCM module. And then the talent sciences, which is a relatively new acquisition of Infor, and this is trying to find the right fit for your candidates. So testing and behavioral, more behavioral testing to figure out who is the right fit for your culture and for the positions in your company or your organization. So that piece works really closely with your staffing and recruiting pieces. Oops, here we go. So what about payroll? We kind of talked about it, and Lawson or Infor's messaging at the Winter Showcase is, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. They've spent years developing it on the COBOL backend system. It works very well. It's one of the leading payroll packages on the market. So they're just not going to redevelop at this time. This may change, MST may change, in the next 6 months, in the next couple of years, but as of right now, they are leaving it on the old S3 COBOL-based programming instead of moving it into the Landmark LPL area. So again, if you're running absence and benefits, you can move on over. If you're not running absence and benefits, or you're running payroll with ADP or Ceridian, even more reason to move everything over to Global HR. So again, got the quotes here. This is directly from Lawson or Infor at the Winter Showcase, basically giving you a roadmap of what you want to do with all of these products and how they can work for you going forward. So your goals are to solidify your system of record, which is, getting your organization tight, getting your job profiles defined, building your competencies, moving over your absence and benefits, time entry with your workforce management or whatever system you're using, and getting your life events set up in Global HR. And then next, you can adopt these next pieces or modules based on your business drivers. So employee safety is a new module that's part of Global HR now. They've moved position budgeting and it's been about 1.5 years or 2 years now that positioning budgeting is now in Global HR. It was not in the initial offerings prior to 10.2. Occupational health is a new module, and your employee relations, they've really built that out a lot more than you've got in S3. We've got something here.
So we got a question, and actually it goes back to the whole upgrade versus re-implement versus GHR, and I figured we'd hit it up now since we were just on that topic. And the question is, so if we are upgrading to 10 with a 6-month timeline, would you recommend a parallel project to start at midpoint of that 10 upgrade? That would be 12 to 18 months.
And the answer is absolutely. You can start working on GHR. And the reason that one of the real reasons that you can do that is because, generally speaking, your talent pool that you need in-house is going to be actually very different from the upgrade than it is for GHR. You're going to be starting to work on your design, and you're going to be working with a lot of your key stakeholders, just going ahead and doing the design phase of that. That's going to take some time to get through that. And meanwhile, again, with the 10 upgrade, it's primarily a technical upgrade with very few functional changes in there. Obviously, Infor will continue in order for regulatory reporting to make whatever enhancements it needs to on 10. But again, the 10 upgrade is just really more technical, and so all you're going to be doing is some testing from your functional team. So I think it's an ideal time for you to start looking at GHR and doing the planning and scoping on that.
Yeah, and Paula, you make a good point. With their development, all development resources are now going toward the Global HR and Landmark development. Regulatory reporting will continue to be updated on S3, but if you're looking for new pieces for maybe FMLA tracking or more enhancements in absence management or benefits, those are not going to be happening. Well, I take that back because they are enhancing the Affordable Care Act reporting piece. Again, it's regulatory reporting, but they're building out the benefits module a little more for that. Other than that, all new development and functionality is being developed on Landmark for the Global HR and talent management pieces. So that is a big driver to start thinking about moving in that direction. If you're waiting for them to do something on S3, it's most likely not going to be happening. That is why there's so few changes on the 10 functionally on the 10 version upgrade.
Absolutely.
Okay, great question. Thank you. And anybody, if you have any questions, continue to type them in. We're keeping an eye on them. If we can fit them in the presentation, we'll do that. And then if not, we'll just hit them all out at the end. So basically, next up, you adopt it based on business drivers, those modules there. Your payroll, so you don't disrupt what works. Everything, whether it be in Lawson payroll or ADP or Ceridian or wherever it is, you just kind of leave that where it is. And then you can start looking at your talent management pieces. What do you need? What is your business driver? Do you need a new performance and goal tracking system because you want to get off of success factors? Or do you want to move talent acquisition out of another third-party vendor to start getting everything under the Infor umbrella? And then finally, extend when you're ready, and that's your talent optimization. So that is using those sciences and the HR service delivery and some of the analytics that are available to really beef up all of your processes. So, should we implement GHR absence management and benefits module? So what we want to say is it's out on version 11. It has been GA'd, it's been betaed, but we currently don't know enough about it yet to be able to fully advise you yes or no or one way or the other. We believe that a couple of more critical updates should probably come out before anybody's ready to go on it. But if you start the process now, if you're doing a new implementation, it is definitely, I think it would definitely be beneficial to go onto the global HR landmark benefits and absence management as opposed to doing a new implementation on S3 and then having to move it over later, because you are going to spend 6, 8, 12 months, 6, 8, 10 months, you know, on defining all of your plans, making a lot of the business decisions for your processes and absence and benefits. If it is a straight up conversion, you're all set, everything works very well in S3, that's why I said maybe wait a little more to kind of wait and see where everything falls in the next couple of months before you start doing your conversion over to the global HR landmark pieces.
Yeah, and that goes back to Melissa and I. We always have this conversation, especially around this whole thing on absence and benefits, and that's kind of going back to that slide 2 slides ago. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And one of the things is that, you know, going through what they have in 11, of having to go ahead and doing all that setup and everything else. Again, since you're already going to have, you know, keep intact your S3 system, my whole feeling on that is at least for another year or more to go ahead and leave that where it is, unless you're a brand new implementation, as you were saying. And then if I didn't have benefits and absence management, then I might, you know, consider maybe then reaching out and seeing if they need a beta for it.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the questions that we get all the time is, can we just implement talent acquisition? You know, a lot of companies don't have a recruiting system. We know that the talent acquisition or talent in S3 was not a really strong product, and so a lot of companies have gone on to Taleo and other things. They're getting, you know, their contracts are coming on up, and they just wanted to go ahead and implement talent acquisition. Well, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you want to look at it, Infor is requiring that you do implement GHR before you can, or in conjunction with any other products, including talent acquisition. So the answer is no, I can't just put in talent acquisition. I do need to have GHR. I do need to have my jobs and positions built out within GHR before I can then move on and put in the talent acquisition piece. Same thing goes along for the performance and goals, as well as for compensation. Those are probably the two most widely requested modules that we're hearing about that people want. And again, in order for those to work, you have to have global HR in that. So then the question is that we often get as well is, well, how does HCM and talent management work together? They're two different systems. They're based on, you know, two different environments. And the answer is, and this really came on up in 10.2, there was a huge change that came about, and that was around the trigger interface. So Infor came on out. They had originally had a universal interface and several other interfaces. And in the 10 version, they came out with what's known as the trigger interface. And the trigger interface is nothing more than an export that automatically puts the records into an export in talent management You can either schedule it or run it manually to bring those records over into S3. It's held in a holding file, and you get to go ahead and run those updates in S3 as you need to in order to run payroll. So again, I can go ahead and send those records on over to S3 as I need to. They won't impact payroll until I run the LT101 program. So again, this is now a standard interface within talent management, and all you have to do is point it at the S3 system and you're ready to go. So some of the words that you're going to hear going forward then around the interface is trigger, as I had mentioned just a minute ago. So what they have now called it is when you're setting that up is a trigger interface, and this has been saying that GHR is my system of record, and I am sending those records on over into S3. The syncing of it, again, is that whole thing of, because of the fact that obviously talent management is going to be real time, you put the information in, and it goes on over into S3. But until you run that update file, it actually doesn't sync the two systems up together. So it's going to be really critical of when you're going ahead and doing that syncing on it. And the other great thing about this, for those of you that were on the original 3.4 system, is that trying to map your different codes was really, really difficult. And it now embedded in the product is actually a mapping tool. So for those of you that aren't familiar with it, in GHR, you actually have organization units that equal your process level and department within S3. So you go into the mapping tool and you say this organization unit equals this process level and department. So again, the mapping on there is really easy to do, doesn't take any kind of special skill set. And, again, it's one of those things that helps to make your system, again, it makes it easy for information to flow between talent management and S3. So what modules should I implement, and is there an order? Well, absolutely there is an order in the fact that you have to get global HR up and running first. So that's one of the things that we are really recommending to everybody, is that you really start thinking about getting your global HR up. At that point in time, one of the things is that we will obviously get a lot of requests, or people will ask, well, which one should I implement next? And my reply to you is that do you have business needs in order that needs to be met? So are you having certain systems? So if you're running SuccessFactors, if you're running Taleo, or some of these other ones, and you need to get off of them, obviously those become strong business needs, and those really should be either part of your phase 1 or your phase 2 activities, depending upon the timing on that one. But again, as Infor says, you got to build the foundation. You have to have the foundation first, and then you build from there. So once again, the other modules are all kind of independent of each other, so I don't have to have anything else other than GHR.
Okay, so big question here. How long does your global HR implementation take? So it can take anywhere from about 6 months to a year, based on really how much work you've done prior to the implementation. If you've already done a lot of the organizational structure work, building out your positions, your jobs, you know those are working well, you like your structure, you don't need to revisit it, your supervisory structure, you've built the positions with their competencies, and you don't necessarily even need, and we'll talk about that in a few slides, your competencies and skills in there, but say you've already got them in there. You are, a quarter of the way, a third of the way through a lot of that implementation work. At that point, you can do just a lot of conversions, validate your structure, and then convert it, work on conversions into the new system. They're talking 12 months when you need to reevaluate everything. You've had your system running for 20 years. The people who set it up are long gone. Nobody knows why the decisions were made to do certain things and why certain processes are the way they are. They've just always been like that. If that's kind of how your organization runs or your HR department runs, then we highly advise doing a complete assessment or reassessment of the way your structure and your organization is working today, and what you would really like it to do. I mean, this is a perfect opportunity to get your wish list system. Anything that you've ever wanted out of a system, you know, the sky's the limit when you're moving over to a new foundation.
So let me just add to that one, Melissa, because I actually had something that came on up a couple of weeks ago, and that was the fact that, you know, people are always trying to look for ways of getting the time down on that implementation, and the question will come on up about some of the pre-work that they can do. And a lot of this has absolutely nothing to do with the system, but the fact of the matter is that in their old S3 systems, we know that we just keep adding data in, okay, and we keep adding more companies in, and nobody's ever standardized. So I do want to talk about one of the things to get your global implementation time down is actually start thinking about standardization.
Yes.
So we can take this all the way back to that very first question that was asked about, you know, GHR in conjunction with my 10 upgrade. My thing is that yes, you can start it. You can actually start the two simultaneously if you really wanted to, if you have a lot of standardization to do. And I've seen this a lot with hospitals, especially, about the fact that as they're acquiring, their job codes aren't standardized across the organizations. I mean, that's a key area that they can actually start going into in order to get that time down from maybe a year to maybe a 9-month time frame.
So we've got a little sample project plan, and really this is just RPI methodology that we want to show you. This isn't exactly, you know, every implementation phase won't necessarily take 132 days, but this is kind of when we're doing our implementations, there's this methodology, all of these phases that we go through to determine what's needed for your system and your implementation, and then checkpoints and milestones along the way to ensure that everything's running smoothly before you go live. So how many FTEs do I need to implement GHR? Get that question a lot, and this is just to implement. We're going to go the next slide. I'm going to tell you what you need to support GHR. So we have got a project manager at 50%. So that would be if you have, this is going to be your organization's FTEs that you need. You need an IT sysadmin at 100%. You need an IT conversion person at 100%. And again, this won't be throughout the whole project timeline, but at certain points when you need them, you're going to need 100% of their time. Your HRIS analyst will need to be there 100% of the time throughout the whole project. Probably 150% of the time, sorry to say. Your stakeholders, you're going to need them at 25%. You're going to need them to validate or push along those standardization questions. You know, I've got an implementation right now that they're running a couple of different payrolls. They'd like everybody to be on one payroll. There's still a holdout, and we really need our steering committee and our executive leaders to push that decision to do a standardized payroll and figure out what will make it work so everybody can be on the same one. So those stakeholders are very important in the implementation. Your subject matter experts at 50%. Some of those may be on the core team, so they may be doing a little bit more than 50%, and others may just come in and talk about their process, be in for 40 hours, and be done with it. So it's kind of about what you're looking at. And finally, again, your HRS generalist / manager, whoever the lead in HR is going to be that touches all of the data and all of the processes, along with the HRIS analyst, will also need to be 100%. And for support, so what does your staff need to look like? Basically, you need the Avengers to support this thing, but not really. That's what it's going to feel like in the beginning, but once you get the hang of it, just like any other system, it becomes second nature, and you'll be good with it. So your security expert will be at 0.25, and security is a lot different in global HR and talent management. It is embedded in the landmark system or the talent management system, in the global HR system. So it is not loss in security. You do not need somebody in IT to take care of it. You could have your HRIS analyst do the security for you, or somebody else. You could have somebody in IT if they need to, but the application to create security is inside of Global HR. It is not a separate piece of software. Your HRIS, you will definitely need one FTE to do all of your reporting, your managing of your jobs and positions, your reorgs, and any kind of corrections to data. Your HR manager and or generalist, you will need one of those to complete your approvals. And again, these are all kind of interchangeable, so you don't really need to get hung up on the titles here, but really the tasks. We're talking about how much of an FTE you'll need to perform these tasks on a daily basis ongoing. Your comp manager, if you are to implement the compensation module and you decide to do salary planning and incentive comp with it, those are pretty heavily maintained pieces, so you would need one FTE. If you're not planning on doing either of those, this can be rolled up into an HR generalist type of position. Your generalist or your organizational development leader or team member would be at halftime, and that's maintaining your competencies, qualifications. Again, we'll go more into qualifications, competencies, those types of things, skills, knowledge, in a sec, and you can determine. So you may or may not need this FTE, half-time FTE. And of course, your sysadmin, we've got him at 2.5 in IT, supporting Landmark, supporting your global HR, and doing any of the patching. But of course, once you move to XI and 11 and everything's on Landmark, this system admin will be shared across all of your modules and all of your tech. Okay, so what do you need to get ready for global HR? We've been touching on this a little bit throughout, and you'll continue to hear us touching about it because it's paramount that you have your organization structure built and organized and defined before you even take a look at what the system is doing. So if you want to
yeah, so on the organizational structure, I think really the key on this one. So again, for those of you that are used to having the S3 system, we built everything off of process levels and departments. And again, one of the big changes in this is that they go to these organization units, and the organization structure is built on which org unit reports to which org unit. And I will tell you that based on my experience in implementing this in many clients, the organizational structure piece has always been the one that takes the longest amount of time, because of the fact that one of the things that in the past really a lot of that was driven by finance. Would just go ahead and say we have a new department and cost center, and a lot of people had that piece automated. And again, so now we're building these structures, and so a key piece of this as well is to get finance involved so that you can go ahead and do which one reports to which. But again, this is building an organizational structure. And again, we have two different structures. Well, actually, we have three structures in talent management, and we have the organizational structure, which is different than my supervisor structure, which is then different than my whole resource or structure of who reports to who. Mm-hmm. So again, these are things that you can start thinking about, start planning those pieces before you even get into the system. Mm-hmm.
Your positions are really important. Your positions are necessary. So if you don't really have defaulting right now, that's some of the pre-work. What kind of data do you want to default from your jobs so that your position maintenance can be a little smoother? What kind of data do you want to start capturing now that you may have not captured back in the S3 days because either there was nowhere to put it, or because it was a little more difficult to get to, or because you never did it before, so you didn't start doing it. So this is, again, a great time to start capturing some of that data that you might need to start reporting on, or will help the other module implementations with ease to have that data in there. Okay, so we kind of talked about the org structure. So we want to talk about some of the new features, or I don't want to say new because talent management, global HR has been around for a while, but the features and the functionality that is going to be different that you get in global HR that you don't have right now in S3. So on the organization, you've got, so we've got here no need for intercompany transfers. And I'm losing my words right now on explaining.
I think that the big thing is, and this was one of kind of the thing that I'm seeing more and more, again, because of acquisitions, is the fact that you want to build everything under one HR company. And that's the key to all of this, is that by having everybody in one HR company, and again, because of the way that org units are defined, they can be defined at a very broader level. So I can have multiple companies all under this one organization, one organization, and that allows me to go ahead and to be able to transfer people between the organizations, whereas we know in the old S3 system, you know, what you ended up having to do is actually term people and then rehire them into the new system. They'd be getting a new employee number, and
then
a lot
you
of
have
times
to try and figure out what to do with their time, their accruals and their benefits and waiting time, waiting entry points.
Right.
And you've got unlimited organization levels, and the way the organization levels kind of work when you do reorgs or you bring affiliates on, it is a lot easier. They have a drag and drop kind of system, and whether it's as easy as drag and drop, I won't say it's super easy, but it is a lot easier to now take one, what you would think of as a department or process level, and move it under another in that case. It is not starting from scratch and trying to remove a lot of history to get it over into another, or get all the employees over into another quote-unquote department process level, which is called an organization unit in global HR. So you do have unlimited levels where you can nest all of those units to however you need to, and then you can map them so that the levels of these organizations can match. Even if one is tiered 3 down, but it's at the same level as one that's right underneath another structured unit, it's a lot easier to make those relationships.
And the other thing that's great about the org structure in talent management is that you can actually build basically reporting organization units in there. So if you want to be able to do roll-up reporting, it's really easy because you can build these kind of holding areas where maybe there's not actually any employees that are in this particular org unit, but everything underneath them will have different ones, and then you can do the roll-up reporting. And that's one of the things that is really a great thing to have in talent management that has been missing in S3.
Your effective dates. You can do as of dating, and you may have already been hearing this. I've been kind of talking about it in all of my talent management webinars for the last couple of years. It's a really exciting thing because you can put in the date of, you know, a year from now or a year ago, and you have a point in time snapshot of your organization at that point, and you can do any kind of reporting from there, your head counts, who's active, who's termed, and it's really, really easy. Or, like I said, a year from now or 6 months from now with new hires that are pending in the system, and see what your organization is going to look like. I think that's a really great feature that they've had the whole time, but you haven't had that ability. It's been very hard to do that sort of reporting in S3. Well, resources, yeah. Resources, that in itself, you no longer are confined with the employee term. You don't need to necessarily have a social security number or birth date to put somebody into your system. You do need that if you want to pay them to move them over to payroll, but now you can create resources as your contractors, your students, interns, anybody that does work for you or could possibly be a manager for you, contract managers. You can now give them manager space and let them do whatever they need to do, terminate employees or act on employees, do actions within the system as a resource.
And the other thing on the resources is that that's great about this is that for a lot of people, they wanted to be able to, they may have contractors, and again, you can pick and choose who and what types of people that you want to be using for head counting purposes. So a lot of companies that have had like permanent contractors or long-term contractors, you can now actually put them into for your head count reporting. So again, you can go ahead and exclude or exclude who you want to for head count purposes, and you can have any type of workers that you want in the system. Supervisor structures. So the one thing about all of this is that we, in the S3 system, really supervisors were really just, for most people, it was just a person. You know, it wasn't really built out to say who, you know, every time somebody left the company, you were kind of always struggling to figure out who that person really then reported to. So one of the great things that they have in talent management is this whole thing around a separate supervisor structure. So this is who do I report to, and you can have a direct and an indirect supervisor, so you can get your matrix reporting out of that as well. But one of the things about this is that it's actually a supervisory position rather than a person. So I'm creating these positions, and then as a person vacates it, the system will automatically, if you want it to, will go on up if that position is vacant and go on up to the next supervisory level for anything around like manager space or any of those things that will go on up just to be able to maintain it. But the great thing is that you can go ahead and then you have the position, the supervisory position, and somebody can then just go ahead when you have that vacancy filled, will automatically inherit that supervisory position, because they're actually, the supervisory position is actually tied on the position itself. So again, separate structure, but very easy, you know, to go ahead and maintain. And again, the person goes with that supervisory position rather than having to always look to put that
give
next
them a position and then give them a supervisor code. And right,
exactly.
Okay, so your company only uses jobs. Can you make GHR work with jobs only? You cannot. You do need all of the details for both jobs and positions. And again, setting up those defaults, what kind of data do you want to come down from your job down to your position. These are key for your later implementations. So your talent acquisition, if you want to post requisitions for positions, obviously positions need to be in there. Jobs will not have enough information in it to be able to post requisitions. Same thing for comp and tying your comp to your performance and merit later. Bringing in positions with those skill sets, even if there is the smallest amount of skills and competencies in there, it will help you with giving you some reporting for performance and not just performance, but really helping you with merit based on, okay, this is the person, this is their skill set, this is their position, what's that percent fit together? And let's bring in some of the performance metrics in here. How does all of that look? And now let me give you an idea of what their merit should look like based on all of those things together. So without that position, none of that can really occur. Okay, so here we kind of talked about this. We both have varying degrees of what we think on whether competencies should be built out for your initial implementation and then where you go later on with competencies. So this is going to be our knockout round. I believe that to fully leverage talent management, you should have those competencies already in your positions. As I said, initial implementation, if you need it in 9 months, if you need it in 6 months, that can't happen. But if you have the time and you want to be very thoughtful with your implementation, you have the time to be very thoughtful, I would definitely encourage defining core competencies for your positions. Again, you don't have to have 100 competencies, but if you say 3 competencies are what I need for this position or even for this job, and I can default those core competencies down to my position, that'll give you a leg up on nothing at all. And you're spending a lot of money on this software, and to really utilize everything, all the functionality that these talent management modules offer, you need some varying degree of competency set up and built on both your positions and on your resources. So Team Brody
says that, you know what, competencies, they're just not required. And I have to tell you, on the implementations that I worked on, we did not put in competencies initially. The reason why is it's really time consuming to go ahead and put those in. A lot of organizations don't even have their competencies built, and more importantly, competencies, the whole building of competencies can be its own project all on its own. And I can tell you that I've been on projects that can get completely bogged down in trying to figure out competencies. And I agree that, you know what, I do want the Ferrari, but I got to start off with my Hyundai to begin with. So.
Okay, so you've got employee and manager self-service, and you've done, and if anybody was in my earlier 11 o'clock Eastern presentation webinar, we've talked about a lot of the customizations that are happening in there, and you have a lot of those, and you'd like to port those with you to Global HR. Sorry to be, you know, big downer here, Debbie Downer, but those will not port over. The good news is Configuration Console that works on Landmark makes it easy for you to do your own configurations, and you doesn't mean you have to be a programmer to do it. There are some elements of Configuration Console that allow you to write JavaScript and do some pretty in-depth configurations, but for the most part, Paula and I, you know, we learned it in, you know, a week, and we've done a lot more than a week's worth, but it was easy enough to pick up without that programming background. I have a programming background, Paula does not.
I don't.
And we both, I feel like we have the equal level of understanding and being able to deliver with the two different backgrounds. So it is now a configuration. You'll do personalizations and configurations to Landmark code. You will not do customizations. Customizations is changing the underlying logic, and there's not a tool to currently do that. Version 11, I've heard you can do a little bit more behind it, but again, it's a configuration. You're not truly changing the code. You're just putting some overlaying code to change what it's going to act like. What Infor will call a customization is actually when their programmers will go in there and make a change for you at whatever rate they charge to do any of those things. So I kind of want everybody to get configure or customizations out of the vernacular. It's all going to be a configuration going forward, which makes it really easy to patch and do updates upon. Okay, I've got custom screens in S3. Can I keep my customs? Just kind of talked about that. You will not be able to bring any of those over. S3 works a lot differently. The underlying code is a lot COBOL-based. Landmark uses loss and pattern language, so none of those will work together. But Lawson's been listening, or Infor has been listening to a lot of the clients and the changes and customizations they were making prior, and they have built a lot of those business needs into global HR and talent management. So the hope is that you won't have to do any customization, because what you needed before and what you were customizing to get to that before is now in there. There are some things that they're working on right now, like the EDI interfaces, that they're hearing from everybody that you have to write a custom program to push those out, and they're aware that everybody does those, and that is something they're working on. So if it's not there yet, it's in the pipeline to be delivered in another update.
So history, that's the one question that I've gotten so many times on the projects that I've worked on, is how much history should I be bringing on over? And of course, you know, in the old S3 world, we would always sit there and say that, you know what, you never want to bring on over history, and wouldn't that be nice? You know, but unfortunately, the reality is that people get rehired. And because of the way that talent management works, we've learned this the hard way, because originally we said, you know what, don't bring over any history. But what happens when I rehire somebody and I try taking their record over to from talent management to S3, and it fails? So there is a certain amount of history that you're going to have to bring on over, and it really is just kind of dependent on the organization. You know, I'm still a firm believer of bringing over as little as possible. So, you know, we try making sure that you're not bringing on over more than 2 years of terms. But again, so this goes back to some of the stuff that you can be doing is start thinking about, you know what do I want to be taking on over into talent management when I build it on out, and how much of my terms do I want to bring over. And the other thing is that I've had a couple of clients that I've implemented on that wanted to have their retirees brought over, and the same thing that I have to ask them is, you know, is there anything that you're going to be doing on the retirees in the future? And if the answer is no, then I'm saying leave them in your old S3 system.
8 minutes.
Okay, we'll just breeze through these. Proxy management for managers. I really am super excited about this, and probably way more excited than I should be, but it's only because over the years I've been tasked to try and find out or try and make it work for companies who need to get proxy access to the managers, and S3 just the structure wasn't available. So we're going to go really quick. You've got a couple of screens here. I'm logged in as a manager. I go to my proxy management. I go to my start menu. I switch to proxy. I see the list of managers there. Right now, Melissa Olson's the only manager that's giving me access to proxy her, but I could have a list of 4 or 5 managers if they need me as a proxy. And then, boom, it just kind of flickers, logs me in to another portal screen or another process board, and you see on the top there Emily Ackers, who is my proxy, and I'm proxy mode for Melissa Olson. And now she can go into my staff and action on anything, and then she can switch out, and she's in her own manager space.
All right, so this is
yeah, we don't have too much time.
So I'm just going to just kind of really quickly then about a small company, just not enough resources. And I do want to talk about the fact that there is the ability to have software as a service on that, where it can go ahead and be hosted, where they will go ahead and take care of all of your updates. And so for those of you that are a really small company, I would suggest that this might be something that you want to look at, is use rather than an on-premise, go ahead and do a software as a service on this. And the last one that we want to just talk about really quick is reporting. And again, reporting in talent management is very different. It's pretty much list driven, but the great thing is that you can go to a lot of your different fields. For those of you that are used to using add-ins, it's kind of that way, but instead of having to know exactly which form and field that you're going to, it's based off of business classes, but the ability to go ahead and go across is great. There's a lot of also built-in reporting, so they already have the EEO and the VETS 100 reports. And again, everything around reporting is based on the turnover cube, and a lot of embedded reports are in there. So again, you can find out different pieces of information, and you can also personalize it for the individual users. So,
push it out. Yeah.
Yep, and then be able to push it out, exactly. Yeah. And you can push out reports to your entire population if you want.
Or to few people.
All right.
And you can push them out on manager space, which is also nice because they don't have to have, loss in access to be able to get some of those reports. So let's go ahead and hit some questions.
All right, thank you very much, guys. It was a terrific presentation. We got a couple questions lined up, and anyone else listening, if you got anything else, now's the time to put it in there. So question number 1, does the landmark benefits module, if you implement it, enable you to use the landmark web UI, employee manager self-service, to replace the LSF, employee manager self-service, for annual enrollment and benefits?
Yes, yes, and yes. So, yes, so you will set up, and we've got a version of 11 on our sandbox here, and we're in the midst of setting it all up. So unfortunately, and this presentation was we just didn't have enough time to go through everything. So coming soon, you will set up all of your enrollment rules there, as you do in S3, and in employee space there is an area, there's actually a benefits, if you're familiar with the process board in global HR, everybody has their own little manager, employee, recruiter. There's one for benefit, or actually in the employee space, there's one for benefits. They open it up, and they can go to open enrollment. They can see their benefits plans, pretty much the same things that right now would be pushed over into S3.
Okay. The next question here, does the landmark employee space web UI integrate with Mingle? And we brought Mr. Stout here just in case.
Yeah.
Yes, and a crossover event, special.
That's an excellent question. So I would say that Employee Space, it was designed as a standalone web application. You don't need to run it in Mingle. Will it run in Mingle? I don't see why not. Why I don't know why Employee Space wouldn't run in Mingle. I haven't personally tried it. But I would think that you could add it using a custom Mingle plugin.
And the future of 11 is everything's going to be a web interface anyway. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what we have coming up in the next presentation. We're going to talk about some of the HTML5 super dynamic and really improved web-based user interfaces that they have coming out in the new system.
Coming on at 4 o'clock today, our last live webinar of the day on XI. If you want to sign up, just go to www.rpic.com. Under events. A couple of compliments that you're doing great, and you guys must be exhausted by now. Thank you guys very much.
This guy's exhausted. He's now been in every single one, whether he's presenting or just.
I couldn't let one go by.
Thank you.
So thank you, everyone. And if you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out. We're always happy to chat.
Our emails are here, and yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.